A woman's brooch in a 1920 photo looks ordinary, but zooming in reveals a hidden symbol. Antique appraiser Catherine Moore had spent 15 years evaluating estate collections, but the ornate jewelry box she found at the Hartford, Connecticut estate sale immediately caught her professional attention. The elderly homeowner, Mrs. Eleanor Whitfield, had passed away at 97, leaving behind a house filled with decades of carefully preserved belongings that told the story of a fascinating life. "This belonged to my Aunt Victoria," Mrs. Whitfield's nephew explained, as Catherine examined the intricately carved mahogany box. "She never married, lived her whole life in this house. Always said she had important work to do, but the family never really understood what she meant." Inside the jewelry box, beneath layers of tissue paper that had yellowed with age, Catherine discovered an unusual collection. Most pieces were typical of the 1920s: Art Deco earrings, pearl necklaces, delicate gold chains, but one item stood out dramatically. A small silver brooch, no larger than a silver dollar, featured an intricate design that seemed far more complex than typical costume jewelry of the era. The brooch depicted what appeared to be a stylized tree, with elaborate root systems extending in multiple directions. At first glance, it looked like a simple nature motif popular during the arts and crafts movement, but something about the precision of the metalwork suggested deeper significance. Tucked beneath the brooch was a faded photograph showing a woman in her 30s wearing a fashionable 1920s dress and hat. The woman's confident pose and direct gaze suggested someone accustomed to authority and respect. She wore the same brooch prominently displayed on her lapel, but in the photograph, the intricate details were barely visible. Catherine's trained eye immediately recognized that this wasn't just a family keepsake. It was a clue to something much more significant. The craftsmanship of the brooch was extraordinary, suggesting it had been created by a master jeweler for a specific purpose, rather than mass-produced for general sale. As she examined the photograph more closely with her professional magnifying glass, Catherine noticed something that made her pulse quicken: tiny symbols etched within the brooch's tree design that weren't visible to the naked eye. Back in her Boston appraisal office, Catherine used high-resolution digital photography to examine both the brooch and the photograph in unprecedented detail. What she discovered under magnification left her speechless. The tree design contained dozens of tiny symbols embedded within the metalwork, mathematical equations, chemical formulas, and what appeared to be coded text written in multiple languages. The photograph revealed even more intriguing details when enhanced through digital processing. The woman's brooch showed clearly visible markings that formed a complex pattern within the tree's branches and roots. Each symbol appeared to be precisely placed, suggesting this wasn't decorative artwork, but functional notation of some kind. Catherine's research into the brooch's metallurgy revealed sophisticated construction techniques. The silver wasn't standard jewelry-grade material, but a specialized alloy that would have been expensive and difficult to obtain in 1920. The craftsmanship indicated work by someone with both artistic skill and technical knowledge far beyond typical jewelry making. Her colleague, Dr. Marcus Chen, specialized in historical document analysis and cryptography. When Catherine showed him the enhanced images, his reaction was immediate and profound. "This isn't jewelry," he said, studying the symbols through a high-powered microscope. "This is a portable data storage device disguised as decorative accessories." Data storage in 1920. Look at these markings more carefully. They're not random decorative elements. This is systematic notation, mathematical formulas, chemical compounds, possibly even early computer programming concepts. Someone embedded crucial information in this brooch, probably because they needed to carry it safely without attracting attention. The symbols included mathematical notations that wouldn't be formally recognized until decades later, chemical formulas for compounds that didn't officially exist in 1920, and geometric patterns that resembled early cybernetic theories. Most remarkably, some symbols appeared to be written in a code that combined elements from multiple scientific disciplines. Catherine realized she wasn't just examining a piece of vintage jewelry, she was looking at evidence of scientific work that had been deliberately hidden and preserved in plain sight. The woman in the photograph had been carrying revolutionary knowledge disguised as fashion accessories, walking through society with secrets that could change the world pinned to her clothing. The question now was, who was this mysterious woman, and what knowledge had she considered so important that she risked everything to preserve it? Catherine's investigation into the photograph's subject led her to Hartford's Historical Society, where local genealogy records revealed the woman's identity as Victoria Whitfield, born in 1889 to a prominent Connecticut family. Public records showed she had attended Radcliffe College, graduating in 1912 with degrees in both mathematics and chemistry, an extraordinary achievement for a woman of her era. What made Victoria's story even more remarkable was her subsequent career trajectory. After graduation, she had worked briefly for General Electric's research laboratory in Schenectady, New York, one of the few women employed in their scientific division. Her employment records, discovered in the company's archived personnel files, showed she had been involved in special projects related to electrical engineering and industrial chemistry. However, Victoria's employment at General Electric had ended abruptly in 1918, with no explanation provided in her official file. Her personnel record contained only a brief notation: resigned for personal reasons. Special projects transferred to classified division. After leaving GE, Victoria had returned to Hartford and lived quietly in the family home for the rest of her long life. Catherine found additional clues in Hartford's city directories from the 1920s and 1930s. Victoria was listed as a private consultant and technical advisor, but no specific clients or projects were mentioned. Local newspaper archives contained occasional references to her involvement in various scientific and educational organizations, but always in vague terms that revealed little about her actual work. The breakthrough came when Catherine discovered correspondence in the Hartford Historical Society's manuscript collection. Letters between Victoria and several prominent scientists of the era revealed she had been working on theoretical problems related to information storage, computational mathematics, and what would later be recognized as early computer science concepts. One letter, dated 1923, contained a particularly intriguing passage. The work continues, though necessarily in complete secrecy. The implications are too significant to risk premature disclosure. I have developed methods to preserve the essential formulations should anything happen to prevent completion of the research. Another letter from 1925 was even more revealing. The Brooch system has proven effective beyond expectations. All crucial data is now safely embedded and virtually undetectable. Future researchers will have everything they need, provided they know how to properly interpret the coding system. Catherine realized that Victoria Whitfield had been decades ahead of her time, developing information storage and computational theories that wouldn't be formally recognized until the computer age. Catherine's research revealed that Victoria hadn't been working alone. The letters in the Hartford Historical Society collection showed she had been part of a secretive network of scientists and mathematicians who were exploring revolutionary concepts decades before the world was ready to accept them. This group included several individuals who would later become famous for their contributions to computer science, information theory, and advanced mathematics. Dr. Margaret Fleming, a physicist from Mount Holyoke College, had been one of Victoria's closest collaborators. Their correspondence revealed they had been working together on theoretical problems related to mechanical computation and information encoding. Dr. Fleming's letters mentioned the jewelry project multiple times, suggesting that Victoria's brooch was part of a larger system for preserving and transmitting scientific knowledge. Another collaborator was Professor James Morrison from Harvard University, who specialized in advanced mathematics and had been secretly developing early concepts related to binary coding and logical computation. His letters to Victoria contained complex mathematical formulas and references to portable notation systems that could preserve crucial calculations without attracting unwanted attention from academic or government authorities. The most intriguing correspondence came from Dr. Sarah Chen, a chemist who had worked for DuPont before establishing her own private laboratory. Dr. Chen's letters revealed that the network had been developing revolutionary materials and processes that were decades ahead of their time, including synthetic compounds and metallurgical techniques that wouldn't be publicly known until the 1950s. What became clear from the correspondence was that this group of scientists had been working in complete secrecy because their research had implications that could be dangerous if it fell into the wrong hands. They had developed methods for preserving their work through seemingly innocent everyday objects, with Victoria's brooch being just one example of their innovative concealment techniques. The letters also revealed that each member of the network possessed different pieces of a larger puzzle. Victoria's brooch contained mathematical and computational formulas, but other members had preserved chemical processes, metallurgical specifications, and theoretical frameworks using similar concealment methods. Only by bringing all the pieces together could the complete scope of their revolutionary work be understood. Catherine realized she had stumbled upon evidence of one of history's most sophisticated and secretive scientific collaborations, hidden in plain sight for over a century. Working with Dr. Chen and a team of specialists from MIT, Catherine began the painstaking process of decoding the symbols embedded in Victoria's brooch. What they discovered was both fascinating and revolutionary. The tiny markings contained the mathematical foundations for concepts that wouldn't be formally developed until the computer age of the 1940s and 1950s. The tree's root system contained binary notation systems that predated similar work by decades. The trunk featured geometric algorithms that resembled early programming logic, while the branches held mathematical formulas for calculating complex computational processes. Most remarkably, the leaves of the tree contained what appeared to be early versions of encryption and data compression techniques. Dr. Chen's cryptographic analysis revealed that Victoria had developed a multi-layered coding system that was extraordinarily sophisticated for its time. She wasn't just preserving information, Dr. Chen explained. She was creating a secure storage and transmission system that could protect sensitive data while hiding it in plain sight. This is essentially early cybersecurity theory, developed decades before anyone else was thinking about these problems. The chemical formulas embedded in the brooch were equally advanced. They described synthetic materials and industrial processes that could have revolutionized manufacturing, electronics, and metallurgy if they had been developed in the 1920s. Some formulas related to semiconductor properties and electrical conductivity that wouldn't be commercially exploited until the transistor age. Perhaps most remarkably, Victoria had somehow anticipated the need for computational devices and had developed theoretical frameworks for mechanical calculation machines that could process information using the mathematical principles she had encoded in the brooch. Her work represented a complete theoretical foundation for what would later become computer science. The team's analysis also revealed that Victoria's coding system had been designed to be modular and expandable. Each symbol could be combined with others to create more complex meanings, and the overall design allowed for virtually unlimited information storage within a small physical space. She had essentially created a biological model for information technology, using organic forms to disguise revolutionary computational concepts. As the team worked to decode more of the brooch's hidden information, they began to understand the true scope of Victoria's genius. She hadn't just been ahead of her time, she had been operating on a completely different level of scientific understanding, developing concepts that still seemed advanced by contemporary standards. As Catherine and her team delved deeper into Victoria's encoded formulas, they discovered why her work had been kept secret for so long. The mathematical and chemical processes described in the brooch weren't just theoretical concepts. They were practical instructions for creating technologies that could be extremely dangerous in the wrong hands. The metallurgical formulas, when fully decoded, described methods for creating materials with properties that could be used for both beneficial and destructive purposes. The computational frameworks contained algorithms that could be applied to code breaking, surveillance, and information warfare decades before such concepts were formally recognized as security threats. Dr. Chen's analysis revealed that Victoria and her collaborators had been aware of these dangers from the beginning. Hidden within the brooch's design were several warning symbols and safety protocols that indicated the information should only be used by qualified scientists with appropriate ethical guidelines. Victoria had essentially created an early version of scientific ethics guidelines embedded directly into her preserved research. The correspondence found in Hartford revealed that the secretive network of scientists had been motivated partly by their awareness that their discoveries could be misused. In a letter dated 1924, Victoria had written, "The power inherent in these discoveries demands the highest level of responsibility. We must preserve the knowledge for future generations while ensuring it cannot be exploited by those who would use it for harmful purposes." Another letter revealed that the network had developed an elaborate system for validating the character and intentions of anyone who might eventually decode their hidden research. The brooch contained not just scientific information, but also tests and challenges that would help identify whether a future researcher had the wisdom and ethics necessary to properly handle such powerful knowledge. Catherine realized that Victoria's work represented more than just advanced science. It was a sophisticated attempt to bridge the gap between scientific discovery and social responsibility. Victoria had been grappling with questions about the relationship between knowledge and power that wouldn't become central to scientific discourse until the atomic age. The team also discovered that Victoria's network had been monitoring political and social developments throughout the 1920s and 1930s, trying to determine when it might be safe to reveal their discoveries. Unfortunately, the rise of totalitarian governments and the increasing militarization of scientific research had convinced them that their work needed to remain hidden indefinitely. By the time World War II ended and the world entered the atomic age, most of the original network members had died, taking their secrets with them. Only Victoria had lived long enough to see the computer age begin, but by then she was elderly and apparently decided the world still wasn't ready for the full scope of their revolutionary discoveries. Chapter 7. The Network's Extent. Catherine's investigation expanded as she tracked down references to other members of Victoria's secretive scientific network. What she discovered was astonishing in its scope and sophistication. The group hadn't been limited to just a few individuals working in isolation. It had been a comprehensive network spanning multiple universities, research institutions, and private laboratories across the United States and Europe. Dr. Margaret Fleming's personal papers, preserved at Mount Holyoke College, revealed that she had developed her own concealment methods for preserving revolutionary research. Fleming had embedded crucial formulas into the design of decorative pottery, creating what appeared to be artistic ceramics that actually contained sophisticated chemical and physical equations encoded in the glazing patterns and structural elements. Professor Morrison's work at Harvard had been similarly concealed. His mathematical breakthroughs had been preserved in architectural drawings for buildings that were never constructed, with computational algorithms disguised as structural engineering calculations. These drawings, stored in Harvard's architectural archives, had been overlooked for decades because they appeared to be conventional building plans rather than revolutionary mathematical concepts. Dr. Sarah Chen's contributions were perhaps the most extensive. Her private laboratory records, discovered in her family's estate, showed she had developed an entire library of chemical formulas and metallurgical processes embedded in everyday household objects. Decorative metalwork, jewelry designs, and even kitchen utensils had been crafted to contain crucial technical information that could revolutionize industrial processes. The network's correspondence revealed they had been inspired by historical examples of knowledge preservation during periods of persecution and suppression. They had studied how ancient libraries had protected important texts during invasions, how medieval scholars had preserved classical knowledge during dark ages, and how various cultures had embedded crucial information in art, crafts, and cultural traditions. What made their approach unique was the systematic nature of their concealment methods. Each member specialized in different encoding techniques, but all followed common principles that would allow future researchers to recognize and decode the hidden information. They had created a comprehensive system for preserving revolutionary scientific knowledge that could survive political upheavals, wars, and social changes. The network had also developed methods for verifying the authenticity of their hidden research and protecting it from misinterpretation or misuse. Complex authentication systems were embedded alongside the scientific information, ensuring that only qualified researchers with appropriate knowledge and ethics could access and understand the full scope of their discoveries. Catherine realized that Victoria's brooch was just one small piece of what might be the most sophisticated knowledge preservation system ever created, hidden in plain sight throughout American society for over a century. Chapter 8. Modern Implications. As Catherine and her research team worked to understand the full scope of Victoria's network, they began to realize the profound implications their discoveries could have for contemporary science and technology. The formulas and processes encoded in the brooch weren't just historically interesting, they contained solutions to problems that modern researchers were still struggling to solve. The computational algorithms Victoria had developed were remarkably similar to advanced artificial intelligence concepts that were currently at the cutting edge of technology research. Her mathematical frameworks for information processing and data compression could potentially revolutionize computer science and telecommunications. Some of her theoretical work seemed to anticipate quantum computing concepts that were only beginning to be explored in contemporary laboratories. The chemical and metallurgical processes were equally revolutionary. Dr. Chen's analysis suggested that Victoria's formulas could lead to the development of new materials with properties that could advance everything from renewable energy systems to medical devices. Her work on synthetic compounds anticipated molecular engineering techniques that were currently being developed by pharmaceutical and materials science companies. Perhaps most remarkably, Victoria's integrated approach to preserving and protecting scientific knowledge offered solutions to contemporary problems in information security and ethical technology development. Her methods for embedding authentication and safety protocols directly into scientific data could help address current concerns about artificial intelligence safety and the responsible development of powerful technologies. Catherine arranged a confidential meeting with Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, director of MIT's Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, to discuss the potential applications of Victoria's work. Dr. Rodriguez's reaction was immediate and profound. "This is extraordinary," she said, studying the decoded formulas. She was working on problems that we're just beginning to understand today. Some of these approaches could accelerate our research by decades. What are the implications if we develop these technologies? If these formulas work as described, we could be looking at breakthroughs in computational efficiency, materials science, and information security that could transform multiple industries. But we'd need to be extremely careful about how we proceed. Victoria was right to be concerned about the potential dangers. The team realized they faced the same ethical dilemmas that had confronted Victoria and her collaborators a century earlier. The knowledge they had uncovered was potentially world-changing, but it also carried significant risks if it were developed or applied irresponsibly. Following Victoria's example, they decided to proceed with extreme caution, establishing an ethics committee to guide their research and ensuring that any developments would be subject to rigorous safety and security reviews before being made public. Chapter 9. The Living Legacy. Catherine's research into Victoria's network led to an unexpected discovery that changed everything she thought she knew about the scope and timeline of their work. While examining Dr. Chen's laboratory records more carefully, she found evidence that the network hadn't disbanded in the 1940s, as she had assumed. It had continued operating in secret, passing their knowledge and methods to carefully selected successors across multiple generations. The evidence came in the form of coded references in Dr. Chen's later correspondence, mentioning meetings with young associates and new guardians who were being trained to continue the work. These references suggested that the network had evolved into a multi-generational organization dedicated to preserving and gradually introducing revolutionary scientific concepts when the world was ready to receive them safely. Catherine realized that some of the greatest technological advances of the past century might have been influenced by Victoria's network, introduced gradually through their hidden successors rather than developed independently. This would explain why certain breakthroughs had seemed to emerge simultaneously from multiple sources, and why some technological developments had progressed faster than might have been expected based on the apparent state of scientific knowledge at the time. Her investigation led her to Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, a prominent computer scientist at Stanford University who shared the same surname as Professor Morrison from Harvard. When Catherine contacted her with questions about her family history, Dr. Morrison's response was both surprising and enlightening. "I've been waiting for someone like you to come forward," Dr. Morrison said during a confidential phone conversation. "My great-grandfather left detailed instructions that I should watch for researchers who discovered the jewelry coding system. He said that when that happened, it would be time to reveal the next phase of the preservation project." Dr. Morrison explained that she had been raised knowing about the network's existence and had dedicated her career to continuing their work through conventional academic channels. Her research into artificial intelligence and quantum computing had been guided by theoretical frameworks that had been passed down through her family for generations, originally developed by Victoria's network in the 1920s. "The knowledge was never lost," Dr. Morrison continued. "It was carefully preserved and gradually introduced into mainstream science through multiple channels over many decades. My great-grandfather and his colleagues understood that revolutionary changes needed to happen slowly to be safe and sustainable." Catherine realized that Victoria's brooch hadn't just been a historical artifact, it had been a key designed to unlock a living legacy that had been shaping technological development for over a century. The network's influence extended far beyond their original work, continuing to guide scientific progress through their intellectual descendants. Chapter 10. The Circle Complete. The revelation of the network's continued existence led to Catherine being invited to a gathering that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. In a private conference room at the Smithsonian Institution, she met with representatives of the modern continuation of Victoria's original network, scientists, researchers, and academics who had been carrying forward the work for generations while waiting for the right moment to reveal their true heritage. Dr. Morrison introduced Catherine to colleagues whose families had been part of the network for decades. Dr. Michael Fleming, Margaret Fleming's great-nephew, had become a leading expert in materials science while secretly developing technologies based on formulas preserved in his great-aunt's ceramic work. Professor Sarah Chen Williams, descendant of Dr. Sarah Chen, had revolutionized chemical engineering while drawing on knowledge that had been hidden in household objects for over a century. "We've been operating in plain sight for generations," Dr. Fleming explained. "Our families understood that the most effective way to introduce revolutionary concepts was through gradual integration into mainstream scientific research. We've been publishing papers, developing technologies, and training new researchers while carefully managing the pace of discovery to ensure safety and stability." The modern network had evolved far beyond Victoria's original vision. They had developed sophisticated methods for monitoring global political and social conditions, determining when specific technologies could be safely introduced, and ensuring that powerful knowledge remained in responsible hands. Their influence extended through multiple universities, research institutions, and technology companies worldwide. Catherine learned that her discovery of the brooch had been anticipated and welcomed by the network. Victoria's coding system had been designed to serve as a test. Only researchers with the right combination of curiosity, skill, and ethical awareness would be able to decode the hidden information and follow the trail to its ultimate conclusion. Victoria wanted to ensure that when the full scope of the network's work was finally revealed, it would be to people who could understand both its potential and its responsibilities, Dr. Chen Williams explained. "Your investigation has demonstrated exactly the kind of approach she hoped would eventually unlock these secrets." The network offered Catherine the opportunity to join their work, continuing Victoria's legacy while helping to guide the careful introduction of technologies that could benefit humanity while minimizing potential dangers. Her skills as a historical researcher and her demonstrated ethics made her exactly the kind of person the network had been hoping to recruit. Standing in the Smithsonian conference room, holding Victoria's brooch and surrounded by the intellectual descendants of a brilliant woman who had been decades ahead of her time, Catherine felt the weight of both history and responsibility. The simple piece of jewelry that had caught her attention at an estate sale had led her to discover one of the most remarkable stories of scientific vision, courage, and dedication ever preserved. Victoria's brooch would take its place in the Smithsonian's collection, where it would serve as a testament to the power of knowledge, the importance of ethics in scientific research, and the extraordinary lengths to which dedicated people will go to preserve hope for future generations. The hidden symbol had finally revealed its secrets, but more importantly, it had ensured that Victoria's legacy would continue to shape the world for generations to come.